I used to get super worked up about presentations specifically. I remember one that I had for a class last year, I believe, where I just had to go up in front of the class and give a presentation about a technical project that I had been working on. And, in the moment, like Ritu said, like one of the symptoms that I experienced a lot with anxiety was just thinking so much, going hundreds of miles a minute in my head and just thinking like, I'm gonna totally mess up tomorrow, or like my teacher is gonna ask me a question that I don't know how to answer, or everyone in the class is gonna think I'm stupid and that I don't know what I'm talking about or whatever. Honestly, it was kind of like predicting that the presentation would go horribly when I didn't even do the presentation yet. And I definitely feel those physical symptoms, like just being really shaky, just being in the room before my presentation. Like I would be super shaky, my palms would be really sweaty, I would tense up a lot. And a lot of the times I didn't even notice this was happening until like I started speaking and I realized my voice was kind of shaking during the presentation. I definitely had very low awareness. To give some more context, when I started therapy, anxiety wasn't even a big topic in my head as something to think about. And so just the fact that I was like able to, during that presentation, notice that I was physically tight and just like thinking a lot, that was already a big step. But before I started therapy at all, I had no idea like what anxiety was. Honestly, like I just knew it was a thing that made you think a lot, kind of. I think that was just, I was pulling a lot from just conventional wisdom of just anxiety being like a thing that some people have, and it makes you think a lot and it makes your stomach a little bit twisty.
Whenever I would hear feedback, especially if it was in a louder voice, I would take it very personally. I would start to think, I'm doing something wrong. This person hates me. This person doesn't like me. I'm immediately going into all this thinking in my head when instead I could just be biologically listening to what they're saying, but also psychologically listening to what they are trying to convey. Not so much focus on their tone of their voice or like the vocab that they're using.
So people can be under the impression in live time they're listening when they're actually thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that is part of developing more self-awareness inside, experiencing new levels of mental health inside. The technical term is new levels of consciousness. Anxiety, worry, self-doubt, overwhelmed, panic. Do you feel any of these things? Newsflash, so many of us have been feeling these things, and they're all a version of fear. So here's a bold statement for you. Fear, or any version of it, it's all imaginary. It's made up. Stay with us with an open mind. Be interested in what we're conveying, and you too will see it for yourself. It's actually really good news. Welcome. This is Got Your Back podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Faith Escudero. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, school psychologist, special ed, and elementary education teacher.
Hi, I'm Ritu. I am the junior host of Got Your Back. I am an active client of mental health counseling, grounded in the 3 principles of psychology for the past 2.5 years. A little bit about me is that I just graduated from Northeastern University, and I was part of a 5-year program.
Hi, I'm your other junior co-host. My name is Ellie. I'm in my final semester at Northeastern University. I've been in a 5-year program. Like Ritu, I've also been a client of This Understanding. I've been a client for about 2 years, still going, and I started when I was in my junior year of college. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about our topic today.
In today's program, we're going to be talking about anxiety. This is part 2 of the conversation, and we are together facilitating new levels of understanding about it. More specifically, what are the basics? A deeper dive into what is it? What is really behind anxiety from universal leading edge facts that have been uncovered. And then we're going to be talking about simple how-to steps applying anytime, anywhere, the leading edge mental health facts we're discussing in this program. And then we're going to provide vivid examples of when we did and we did not apply these leading edge mental health facts throughout the episodes. So let's dive in. When we're talking about the psychological, we're talking about something that's like invisible, a feeling, a thought. Ellie or Ritu, do you want to elaborate on what you've come to understand about anxiety?
I've learned that anxiety is mainly just imaginary things that I'm doing with my own mind. Before, I feel like I was so comfortable with feeling anxious that I would just automatically think it's adrenaline rush or just something natural that happens to me, and there's really nothing that I can do about it. But after learning about the 3 principles, I learned that there are many ways that I can handle anxiety, just even doing some psychological listening to kind of get a better scope of what I'm doing with my own mind or just like how my body is reacting to something.
You wake up in the morning anxious. Number one, how do you even know that's happening? And like, what is happening?
The biggest indicator for me was what was happening to me biologically. I would feel my stomach tense up and it would just feel like it's in knots. I would feel like psychologically my thoughts would just be super fast. I would think of everything that I need to get done in that day, even if it really just seems impossible. There would be 1,000 things that are going on in my head at like such a fast pace, and that's how I kind of knew that I woke up anxious.
Yeah, I used to get super worked up about presentations specifically. I remember one that I had for a class last year, I believe, where I just had to go up in front of the class and give a presentation about a technical project that I had been working on. And, in the moment, like Ritu said, one of the symptoms that I experienced a lot with anxiety was just thinking so much, like going hundreds of miles a minute in my head and just thinking like, I'm gonna totally mess up tomorrow. My teacher is gonna ask me a question that I don't know how to answer, or everyone in the class is gonna think I'm stupid and that I don't know what I'm talking about or whatever. Honestly, it was kind of like predicting that the presentation would go horribly when I didn't even do the presentation yet. And I would definitely feel those physical symptoms, like just being really shaky, like even just being in the room before my presentation, like I would be super shaky, my palms would be really sweaty, I would tense up a lot, and a lot of the times I didn't even notice this was happening until like I started speaking and I realized my voice was kind of shaking during the presentation. I definitely had very low awareness. To give some more context, when I started therapy, anxiety wasn't even a big topic in my head as something to think about. And so just the fact that I was like able to, during that presentation, notice that I was physically tight and just like thinking a lot, like that was already a big step. But before I started therapy at all, I had no idea what anxiety was. Honestly, like I just knew it was a thing that made you think a lot, kind of. I think that was just, I was pulling a lot from conventional wisdom of just anxiety being a thing that some people have, and it makes you think a lot and it makes your stomach a little bit twisty. But
what in counseling, at least 1 or 2 things, assisted your awareness to grow about what anxiety is or when you're experiencing anxiety?
So I think one of the things that I learned a lot in counseling that helped me to identify what anxiety is just kind of being present more in my body, if that makes sense. Like,
how did you learn that?
Well, I mean, just like through, what do you mean, like through therapy or changes I made in my mind?
So was it something in counseling that helped you to become more aware or more present in your body? Or is that something you just naturally did on your own outside of counseling?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we learned about in counseling, which we will talk more in depth about later, I believe, is psychological listening. So just this whole like exercise of just stopping where you are physically and sort of taking a moment to sort of like reconnect, if that makes sense, and just like listen to your physical surroundings as a way to kind of reground yourself and quiet your mind. And so this was a practice that I employed a lot during my first few months in counseling before I really got into the habit of doing it just like on my own naturally.
Here's the bottom line. A human being is basically 2 parts. One part is biology. That's all our living matter, our heart, our brain, our legs, our eyes. We're also one part psychology. Psychology is our invisible part of ourselves. It is thoughts, it is feelings, it is actions, it is decisions, it's learning. And where that originates from inside is also invisible. And that's what the three principles are. They're mind, thought, and consciousness. They're the power that's inside of every single human being. Realize anything that functions has power behind it. So a simple example would be a mobile phone. When the mobile phone's battery is charged, and that battery has energy that flows from it throughout the phone's hardware, then the mobile phone is able to complete its intended functions. When that battery is empty and needs to be recharged, the hardware is not able to complete any of its intended functions. The original design is human beings. And that source of that energy, that's called mind, and that's inside of us. We also have two other powers inside. One is called consciousness, it's awareness. If you compared it to a computer or a mobile phone, imagine there being no light inside the mobile phone or in the computer. You wouldn't be able to see anything on the screen. That's a metaphor for consciousness, awareness inside. The third power we have is called thought. And that is the ability to think. And it's actually like a magical paintbrush inside. So by understanding these three powers inside at greater levels, you're able to use your operating system more consciously. And that's what Ellie is talking about in the program. We're actually going to do a psychological listening exercise. So you really want to stay tuned and understand this ability you have inside. It's basically in live time, just observing and noticing through any one of your biological senses, such as visual through your eyes, such as auditory through your ears, such as your sense of touch or your sense of smell or your sense of taste or your sense of movement. All of those are biological functions. And so you can actually, instead of thinking, you can actually just observe and notice through any one of those senses. And this psychological listening capability, it's when we're really super present and we're allowing our mind to be really quiet. And it's actually when we are functioning optimally. And in those moments we do it, there's no possibility of feeling fear or anxiety or worry or panic. And this is one of the things, as I spent more time understanding our operating system inside, psychological listening became more and more clear. So understand there is biological listening. That is when you're listening with your ears. That's when you're hearing physical sounds. And then there is psychological listening. And that's when you're using your invisible operating system inside just to observe and notice rather than think in live time. And that brings us back to the original statement saying, fear, anxiety, worry, it's all imaginary. It's made up. It's when we go into thinking and we use our power called thought and we start thinking about the future in present time, in the now, we're actually using our magical paintbrush inside, our power called thought, to anticipate the future. And when we're anticipating it, we're looking at it through an insecure lens. We're looking at it a fearful lens, like we're just not capable of doing well, or it's not possible things are going to go well in that live circumstance. Do you want to elaborate any more, Ritu? Is anything come to mind?
I think just one example that I wanted to give is something that kind of goes back to what you were saying about biological listening versus psychological listening. One of the biggest issues that I had while I was in counseling is that whenever I would hear feedback, especially if it was in a louder voice, I would take it very personally. I would start to think, I'm doing something wrong. This person hates me. This person doesn't like me. I'm immediately going into all this thinking in my head when instead I could just be biologically listening to what they're saying, but also psychologically listening to what they are trying to convey. Not so much focus on their tone of their voice or like the vocab that they're using.
So people can be under the impression in live time they're listening when they're actually thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that is part of developing more self-awareness inside, experiencing new levels of mental health inside. The technical term is new levels of consciousness. And that's really a powerful component of being in mental health counseling with these 3 psychological principles. You learn to use this power inside, this very, very powerful power inside, where you experience new leaps of understanding, and then the very same thing, you look at it again and you see it and you understand it very differently.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because actually just recently when I was kind of figuring out this new program for handling auditory stuff, which was very new to me. I don't really have a strong background in music production tools and stuff. So recently I kind of ran into a conflict where I just could not figure out why the program that I was using wouldn't output a file in the format and the style that I thought I was requesting it to. And so I have a software background, so this is something that I think I definitely had to learn more about, or just the process of problem solving was something that I think I definitely had to learn more consciously.
Both you and Ritu have spent well over 4 years learning about the ins and outs of technology, okay? Different aspects of it, okay? I'm using a broad brush here. So there, you can be in the classroom and you can learn all this information. You're in a live situation and all of a sudden it's requiring you to utilize this knowledge you learned. So learning it is one way of using your mind. To actually be in live time where there's a situation going on, such as Ellie's describing, where she's working with this new piece of technology, this new program, now she needs to use her mind in a different way.
And this is just very much an unknown piece of software to me. And so it was a big moment to kind of step into the unknown, as we like to say a lot, and just really have an open mind. But admittedly, for a little bit while I was working on this problem, I did not have a very open mind. I felt myself getting pretty frustrated and just kind of what's going on? And I kind of fell into an old habit of just insanely, I don't know if that's the right word, but just really going onto Google and all these online platforms to try to figure out the problem, like Stack Overflow and these random forums.
You're seeking and searching for the answer.
Yeah.
And it's almost in this fast kind of nervous way, or it's a more emotionally fueled way.
Felt some anxiety too. I won't be able to solve this problem, but I really need to solve this problem. So it's definitely getting in my head about that. And I also had it in my head, I started thinking again. I started building up the solution, or what the solution might be, without actually knowing the solution. So in my head, I was the solution to this problem has to be something that I don't understand and will be really hard for me to understand, because this platform is it's a very big platform and there's a lot of settings and stuff. And so,
can I say something about that?
Yeah.
So this is to the listener, this is a very graphic example of using the power thought, but in a more lost way, a more complicated way, and really getting lost in what one is creating with it inside their head. So there's the outside. The outside is the piece of software. The outside is she's in front of the computer and she's trying to make this program work. And then on the inside is what she's doing with her operating system. And Ellie is actually describing to you how she is using her power thought as she's trying to figure out this software. How did your self-awareness increase that you were actually starting to feel anxiety while you were trying to figure out this software?
I was very aware that I was getting really fidgety. I kind of shift around in my chair a lot, and my fingers are fidgety.
So you were noticing, you were observing and noticing what you were doing biologically. You were noticing the biological activity and sensations. And as your awareness grew, you realized, oh, I'm using my operating system right now where I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety about this. So how was that useful that your awareness grew?
Yeah, well, the first thing, so I also want to mention that, like, also I just felt like my mind was super foggy. It was kind of filled with a bunch of thoughts, and I was rapidly moving back and forth through different tabs and pages, taking in a lot of information, but nothing was really clicking in my head. The answer still wasn't there. I felt like I was still kind of like obsessively like poring over this thing I had in my head. And so I think being aware that I was doing those things and being aware that those things were anxiety, and also thinking about like all the stuff that I've learned in counseling, the biggest thing that I realized was while I'm doing all this in my head and my head is super busy and I'm shifting around and anxious, it's going to be a lot harder to figure out what the problem is with my program because I'm so crowded and cluttered in my head. How am I going to be able to find a new piece of information or be open to learning something?
I've referred to that as heading in the wrong direction. In live time, there's now. That's live time. And actually we only can experience the now, live time. And in live time, you're describing the outside is the computer, the software, you're feeling your fingers fidgeting, but on the inside, your head is really crowded, it's really busy, you're doing all of this seeking and searching, and it sounded like you were also having repetitive thoughts.
Yeah.
So you've had enough experience and awareness in counseling. It's called heading in the wrong direction. It's like overcomplicating things. The big part, number one, is self-awareness in live time and overall from mental health counseling, from the guidance of mental health counseling. But it's really just stopping in live time and listening to this feeling, letting your head clear out. This is where I say psychological listening is so important. It's just observing and noticing, whether it's the feeling, whether it's the fidgeting, whether it's the racing thoughts. It's just observing and noticing them. And you continue to observe and notice. That's listening versus thinking. It all just starts clearing out. What did you actually do? When you had a realization, that's when you had a leap of awareness. That's when you saw the solution. What did you do inside to allow that to happen?
So I noticed all this anxious activity was going on in me. And I think the first thing that I did was just I shut all of the tabs I had open. I just closed all of the Google tabs that I had physically.
Where did that come from? Why did you do that? It was just kind of like
a gut decision. I kind of just stopped and I was like, you're really anxious. We gotta pause. We gotta take a break right now. Just stop. What you were saying was just like, when you start getting into all of this, stopping is the first step. And so I stopped. I closed all the tabs just kind of out of like a gut response. And then I just sort of like took a step back, metaphorically. I took a step back.
In your head, you took a step back.
Yeah. I was still like physically present here. I did a psychological listening exercise in that moment. I just kind of took some time to close my eyes and just listen to what was going on around me. And eventually, like, I stood up and took a little bit of a walk around just to kind of take more of a break, because I'm a very like physical person. I think like my mind clears a lot easier when I'm moving around.
So when you're moving, you go into observing and noticing the movements that your body's doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's been referred to as moving meditation, but really when we say meditation, we're saying the mind is still and open. There's no thinking going on. And you don't really need the activity. It's more the understanding how to do it inside and why to do it inside. Biologically, Ellie was walking. Biologically, Ritu was listening with her ears. But inside, psychologically, they were receiving, they were observing, noticing. In Ritu's case, the words that were being said to her. And in Ellie's case, as her feet were hitting the floor and as her body was in motion, she was observing and noticing. So number one, it's been a lot of new awareness, learning And here's the crazy thing. You've always been able to do that, right?
Yeah.
But like now with mental health counseling in the three psychological principles, which is another word for the operating system inside, now you have a lot more awareness that you're able to do this thing and you're able to do it more easily, more often in live time.
And I think like another big upgrade that I kind of noticed while we were talking about this is I feel like in the past, like other forms of counseling I've done with other understandings, the idea would be that like walking makes you feel better, doing something makes you feel better. But I feel like now we've kind of been learning that it's the way you're using your mind while you're doing those things. And there are certain ways, like there's certain things that like make psychological listening maybe easier in a way, or just like more straightforward depending on where you're at. But ultimately I feel like it's been really empowering for me to know that I am capable of psychological listening despite what I'm doing physically. But, you know, it's also a thing, like an option, I guess, to take a walk or to journal or whatever, if it makes sense to, instead of feeling like I need to do it.
Number one, it was a capability you were always able to do, but you didn't know that you could do it whenever you chose to do it, or how to do it, or what it was even called. And that's the power of mental health counseling and education in the three psychological principles, or three principles psychology, whichever you prefer to call it. You actually, like a mobile phone, it has an operating system. And whoever designed that operating system, the operating system has these capabilities, but it's the user that needs to have more awareness how the operating system was designed to be able to know what capabilities it's able to do and how to access those capabilities. And that's the same for every human being with their own operating system inside. And just for clarity, the mind and the operating system is very separate than the brain. So there's also been an entanglement between the mind and the brain, or the operating system in the brain. The brain is biological, and basically it's the headquarters of our biology. So it's the thing that allows us to speak, or it allows us to biologically hear, or it allows us to biologically walk. It's the headquarters for our biology, which is very separate than our psychology. And when we're talking about psychology, we're talking about thoughts, feelings, actions, decisions, learning, just being able to experience anything. You're eating food. Yes, you're experiencing it through your biology, your tongue, your mouth, or the smells through your nose, but to actually be aware that you're experiencing a smell, that's your psychology. That's consciousness, to be aware you're actually experiencing a smell. Or use their power thought to either call that a good smell or a bad smell, which is actually the first step of judgment. When we just observe and notice the smell, we just experience it. We don't really call it anything. That's what's been called the meditation part, the neutral, the not calling it good or bad, just experiencing it.
Let's say that you were smelling something right now. What exactly does observing look like? What does noticing look like? What are you doing with your thoughts, or like what are you doing in your mind when you're observing or noticing something?
There's three powers inside. Mind, which is the source of the energy inside. It's the actual living energy inside. It's the power behind being able to think. It's the power behind being able to move. So mind is the source energy, and it's a very sophisticated energy because it's a living energy. Nature created it, which we'll get more into that later. Then there's the power consciousness, which is awareness. Awareness allows you to know you have a name. Awareness allows you to know parts of your body. Awareness allows you to know what location you're in, or if somebody's calling your name. Then there's the power thought. And that's where all the thinking comes in. It's the magical paintbrush. So for example, somebody is cooking garlic. Some people use the power thought to say, oh my God, that smells so delicious. That's a thought. That's originating from using your power thought. I actually have worked with people that really dislike that smell and think it's really awful. That's them using their power to judge the smell as bad. So when we allow the paintbrush to metaphorically be on the table or in the container, and we're only using the power mind, and that's to do anything, okay, and the power consciousness, which is awareness, that's when we're just observing and noticing. We're putting down the power called thought. We're letting it stay in the paintbrush container or on the table, and we're in a state of no thought. We're just allowing our mind to be clear. We're just experiencing. We're just receiving. It's actually just really letting your mind be open. That's it. And just metaphorically breathe the moment in. So it makes sense to point out that Ritu and Ellie both gave great examples. Ritu was getting feedback and she realized she was really taking it personally. She took the steps inside to psychologically listen, observe and notice, just really be interested in what the person was saying. And she was in a much calmer state and was able to receive it more. That right there is an example of anxiety, fear, worry is made up. It's imaginary. Because when we use our mind consciously and we just receive notice, we're interested, we're just focusing on understanding the point that's being conveyed, there is no fear. There is no anxiety. There is no worry or self-doubt. It doesn't exist. Ellie's point was when she was figuring out the program, the technology, and she first went into a lot of anxious thinking or self-doubt, and then she was listening inside, she paused, and she allowed her mind to clear. There is another very graphic example of fear, anxiety. It's imaginary. It's something we're able to create inside with our power called thought, but like it really has no meaning unless we decide as thinkers to give it meaning. Ritu was able to understand more with an open mind what that person was trying to convey to her. So there's a direct example of being in the same live circumstance, using your mind more consciously. The fear, the anxiety, the worry, it just disappears. It vanishes like smoke, like a cloud. It vanishes. Ellie's example with the technology, she was thinking she wasn't good enough or she wasn't able to figure it out, a lot of anxious thinking. And when she paused inside and decided to shift gears, just go into psychological listening, she called it stepping back. Soon after, her mind was more clear, and she's going to get into later how she actually realized what she needed to realize about solving the problem with the program. There's another example, same life circumstance, shifted how she was using her mind. The anxiety, the worry, it just dissipated, it vanished, it disappeared. So these are just a few basic examples where fear is made up. It's imaginary. It's a way of using our operating system, and we create this perspective inside. And here's the other point to understand. When we're experiencing anxious thoughts, fearful thoughts, when our hands are getting sweaty or our heart beating faster, which are biological indications that we're anxious, those thoughts that are coming through, we can either believe them, and then what happens is they become true to us about the circumstance. In this case with Ritu, that she made a mistake, she really messed up, that the other person giving her the feedback is thinking she really made a mistake or did it on purpose. Or as the anxious, worried thoughts, self-doubts come through, we can actually observe and notice them. We can actually psychologically listen to them. So it's very different. We're having a very different relationship with them. We're not taking them seriously. We're allowing them to leave. We're allowing them to dissipate. We, as the thinker, are doing something other than deciding that these thoughts inside have full credibility and they're the truth about the live circumstance or ourself.
Yeah, I feel like what I'm kind of understanding is that I've kind of believed a lot of thoughts without realizing it. So like, for the example of just problem solving, like in school, like I have a homework assignment. Before I really got this understanding, I would see school as something that caused stress or like caused fear or caused anxiety. And I would kind of be afraid almost of like homework assignments and receiving feedback and having to do a homework assignment. And I think like in the past I would have seen that. The conclusion I would have drawn from that is that like school causes fear. But with this understanding, I'm seeing now that like that was me believing or choosing to believe that school caused fear instead of taking a step back and just like shifting my perspective on school to something like more truthful. Like school is an opportunity for me to learn, and that feedback and grades are just showing me how much I understood about something. And so I feel like it's like kind of bridging that, or like kind of separating, I guess, what we believe about something versus what's actually true.
So it's interesting with our power thought, our ability to create, we can make up a whole bunch of stuff about anything. And in this case, you're talking about school. And one of the things you would go into the habit of doing is school's on the outside, whatever it's demanding, whatever's going on. And on the inside, with lower level of awareness, you would go into creating fearful thoughts about school. Okay? That's an example of using your power thought without really understanding that you have this power inside and how it works. And then it's kind of getting lost in those thoughts. Believing them is just, oh, what I'm thinking right now is true. Versus with a greater level of self-awareness, you can step back and you can understand, oh, these are thoughts I'm creating or I'm experiencing right now. And I, as the thinker, get to choose whether to give them credibility or not give them credibility. Step back and understand, what are the value of these thoughts? Are there any value? Which we're going to get into at a deeper level after we do a psychological listening exercise.
What Ellie said was definitely a great point, that I feel like there's a lot of things conventionally that may look like they're fearful. For example, going through a big transition, or like doing an assignment, or like doing a presentation, or like doing a test. There's all these...
How about a job interview?
Job interviews, exactly.
Or moving to a new area, or going to a party or a social event. People can automatically think they're going to be stressful.
Yeah. They're like anticipating that fear. They're like already having a mindset about it, which can kind of lead you to, or lead someone to make more bad decisions in a way. Like you're already thinking that something bad's going to happen, so more things. It's important to separate out that if you're going to be anticipating something to be fearful or something to cause you a lot of anxiety, that can make you already think that something bad's going to happen, or that can also lead to a lot more self-doubt. But it's also what we're choosing to do with our power about these things on the outside.
I think you're also pointing to the idea of conventional wisdom, too, that a group of people, or it can be a common belief that when you're going to take a test, it's scary or it's hard, or like you're going to start a new job and it's automatically going to be scary. Yeah. So those are kind of ideas that can be passed around within a culture, and then like everybody just kind of believes it to be true. And that's what conventional wisdom is, where we're really talking about the opposite, innate wisdom. And that's a power that comes from inside. And that's when you have experienced gut instinct or realization or an inner knowing. And that's when you see for yourself what the actual truth is. but is dependent upon taking the steps inside to ask questions, to go outside the box of, oh, this is going to be stressful, which we're also going to get into deeper levels in our next podcast. But this is where the idea comes in: be your own thinker, be an independent thinker. And really what it is to understand, how does it work inside? Is there another way I could be experiencing this thing? It's allowing yourself to be curious, to see it a different way. So, and we're going to get more into this idea of conventional wisdom and what is kind of passed around in society and believed, and like it's like super not helpful. These things we believe about ourselves. Does another one come to mind, like a common conventional wisdom thing?
I feel like there's a lot of conventional wisdom things about anxiety itself. I've seen on social media how people talk about it as, oh, when you're feeling anxious, like it's your body's way of protecting you. So they're kind of looking at it as a more like positive light instead of addressing what anxiety really is and like what you're doing in your mind. That's kind of like its own mindset. Or I've just been seeing a lot of ways of like relieving anxiety, smoking weed or like having a drink or smoking a cigarette. There's all these ways to fix it, but it's not really addressing the issue, or it's not really helping you to increase your understanding about what anxiety really is.
It's really a judgment thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's a judgment thing, like, this is bad and I need to get rid of it. And also you were saying that was a great example of using the power of thought and making up stuff and totally believing it and getting lost in it. That anxiety is a way that's self-protected. To me, as a licensed mental health counselor who's spent years in studying this mental health and the operating system inside, that's kind of mind-blowing to me. That people would think anxiety is a way to protect yourself. It's actually the opposite. When your head is cluttered like that and you're fearful, you're disconnected from your most powerful capabilities inside that are actually, you're going to have a whole different experience and move through that thing in a much wiser way, in a much healthier way. And that's actually what's going to be self-protective. Is we're going to get more into that capability called innate wisdom, which is the opposite of being anxious. It's the total opposite of being anxious. So was there anything more to add to that, or should we go ahead and jump into our psychological listening exercise to practice?
Yeah, I think it's time for a psychological listening exercise.
So because we are doing an auditory podcast right now, we have a limitation about what kind of psychological listening exercise we're going to do. But understand, the whole purpose of it is to use our mind more consciously. So throughout the exercise, we're going to do what can be called a body scan. But what we're really going to be doing is practicing observing and noticing rather than thinking. Okay? But we're going to do it by listening to our biology. So I'm going to ask everybody, whatever you're doing right now, to kind of tune into your biology, okay? We here, Ellie, Ritu, and myself, we're in chairs. So I'm going to be coming from that place. Maybe whoever's listening, you can find a chair. And if not, that's fine. If you're standing or you're kneeling, you could still be, or laying down, you could still be in some way doing this body scan. Let's start from the bottom of our body and work our way up. And let's just start with observing and noticing our feet. Okay? So in the case your feet are planted on the ground, just really start to feel the pressure of your feet on the ground. So you can put a little more pressure on the right foot and really feel the ground with your foot. And then let's move to the left foot. Just observe and notice. Put some pressure on your left foot and just feel your foot against the ground. And you can actually feel the pressure, the tension starting to go up your calf and through your knee. So let's go back to our feet. One more thing. I'm suggesting start wiggling your right toes. And just observe and notice the sensations as you're wiggling your toes in your right foot. Now move to your left foot and just start wiggling your toes. Observe and notice what the feeling is. Okay, let's lift up our feet, and with our right foot, let's just do some circles to the right with our ankle and start observing and noticing what it feels like in the right ankle as we rotate the foot to the right. Okay, now you can let it relax, move to the left foot, and just rotate your left foot and just really observe and notice what's happening in your ankle as you move it around. And now just let it relax. Bring your attention up through your calves. You can observe and notice as you bring your attention from your right ankle up through your right calf, up to your knee. Okay, and now let's go to the left ankle. Observe and notice as you're bringing your attention from your left ankle up through your left calf, your left shin, your left knee. And just more consciously plant your feet on the ground and let your legs relax. Okay, now what we're going to do is extend in the case you're sitting in a chair, and do whatever makes sense in the case you're not sitting in a chair. What we're going to do is now extend our legs out. Okay, so you're pointing with your toes forward, and now you're bringing your feet down. You're noticing the difference in your knees. Okay, so point your toes forward, and now let your legs relax and bring your feet to the floor. Notice what's happening in your knees. So one more time, what we're going to do is bring our feet out, push out with your heels. Observe and notice the sensation in the backs of your calves as they're stretching. And now let your feet relax back onto the floor. Observe and notice what's happening in your right thigh as you're sitting down, from the knee up to the hip. And then observe and notice what is happening in your left knee up to your hip. Okay, in our chair, we're gonna move from side to side, just at the hip level. So bring your body to the right, and now bring your body to the left at the hip level. Just observe the notice. And what you're doing is you're just kind of wiggling in your chair, okay? And just observe and notice what's happening in your hips. And now you can swing a little bit forward, stretching out your lower back. And now you can sit up straight, bring your lower back up, stretch it up. And now bring it forward. Let it stretch in the back, and just now lean back, lift up out of your hips, and stretch up your lower back. Notice, does it feel any different inside psychologically? Do you feel any calmer? Does your mind feel any clearer? Do you feel more alert? In the case you do, it's because you were observing and noticing what was going on in your body versus doing thinking. Also notice, did it take a while for you to stop thinking? Did you find yourself maybe commenting on different parts of your body while you were completing the steps that were stated? What happened for you, Ritu and Ellie? Anything? Did you notice any changes?
I definitely feel like I feel a lot looser in a way, parts of my body that I maybe didn't realize were a little bit tense. I feel definitely like those are just a lot more fluid.
So when you were observing and noticing, what were you observing and noticing within your body?
I was really just observing how my body moved when I was rolling my calf or rolling our ankles around. I really felt my joints kind of stretching. And one of the cooler parts I thought was when we were just kind of sitting with our legs down, and we're just kind of noticing our calves and shin muscles just still, noticing how they feel. I feel I was realizing Well, the one thing I was really noticing and was grateful for was like my mobility. I was kind of getting aware or becoming more aware of like how fluidly my body was able to move and complete all the steps in the exercise, and just kind of like notice and appreciate what my body is capable of in a
So
way.
psychologically, you were becoming more aware in those moments what your body was capable of.
Yeah.
So that is a graphic difference between the psychological and the biological. When we were finished the exercise, did you notice anything different psychologically inside from before we started till we were finished?
Yeah, my head was a lot clearer. I definitely had, and still kind of have, a conditioned habit of having a very busy mind sometimes. And sometimes like I don't even really notice it's happening. But after that psychological listening exercise, I feel like my mind was a lot clearer. I felt a lot more just like in an open and receptive state instead of just thinking and being
So
busy.
technically, the term for that is in the now, your level of consciousness increased, your level of awareness increased. And that is the power of putting down the power called thought, metaphorically leaving it on the table or in the container, because we can call it, it's like a magical paintbrush. Ritu, did you notice any, and you, if you didn't notice any difference, you can say that too. Like, just be honest. Like, what happened for you during that exercise?
I feel like I noticed a difference with my thoughts because I feel like before the psychological listening exercise, I thought I was calm and I thought that I was, feeling pretty free. But I feel like during the exercise, I noticed how fast my thoughts still were. And I think it helped me realize how, like, even in moments where I might think that I'm calm, I can still not really listen to what's going on inside and not notice that I am still feeling anxious in some moments, or kind of mask the anxiety and think that like I am feeling calm then.
So it's interesting in that as long as you've been learning this, and it's approximately 2.5 years, your awareness is increasing about how you work inside, and your awareness is increasing levels of calmness you can experience, or levels of slowness inside of your head or stillness inside of your head. So that's the beauty of observing a notice or psychologically listening. In the now, that is actually being present, that it's a clear, open, receptive mind. It's allowing. It's something that we always can do. It's actually our original reset button. Like if you ever go into a bowling alley, the start of the game is throwing the ball down the alley with 20 pins set up. And if they don't properly set up, you can hit the reset button. And then the machinery mechanically goes into starting over and getting the pins all properly lined up. Human beings' original reset button is psychological listening. It's where we just really let our mind clear out. We let the thoughts dissipate, and we allow our mind to be still and really open and receptive. But understand it's a practical skill. It is the opposite of thinking. And there's moments that it's really important to psychologically listen. And again, we can psychologically listen through our sense of sight. We can psychologically listen through our sense of smell. In fact, that's what they call aromatherapy. It's actually, you have a scent and you're observing and noticing the scent. So it's not aromatherapy that's calming your mind. It's what you're doing with the aroma, with the scent. We can also psychologically listen through our sense of taste, biological hearing, movement. A really important part of psychological listening is listening to the psychological feeling inside. That feeling is conveying how you're using your mind in live time, or to even observe the thoughts that are in your head. It really informs a person a great deal. For example, Ritu was saying she was noticing how the thoughts were really going fast in your head. And Ellie, I think you have a great example when you were talking about working with the program with the technology. Here you have 5 years of education in computer science and computer engineering, and you're with this new program and you're struggling problem solving it, which to me is a very, very ordinary human experience, to actually, I bet a lot of people can relate to this, where they've studied this particular area for years, whatever it is, being a doctor or law or even an electrician. They have all this knowledge, they have all this experience, but yet they're in current time with this new situation and they have to apply it and problem solve whatever's going on. The important part of what you're talking about is when you were anxious and you were thinking you couldn't solve this, that's referred to as a subjective level of understanding. And when we're talking subjective, we're talking opinions, which is the opposite of facts, which when you get down to it, it's fiction. Okay. Could you elaborate on you were first seeing this program from a subjective level of understanding and then an objective level of understanding?
Yeah, I mean, when I was first dealt with this problem, I think I was in a lot of ways like choosing to believe these kind of subjective levels of understanding.
Which were what?
I just had a lot of thoughts that were like, I won't be able to figure this out, or this program is way too complicated and the solution for this problem is probably too complicated. I also had an idea about what the problem was that I was trying to solve.
Which was what?
I just had it in my head that like the problem was something that had to do with the more complex settings of the program. And so
these were ideas in your head. They were a level of understanding. Some people call it a perspective. And in those moments, how real did they look?
They looked very real.
Did they look like the truth, like the facts?
Yeah.
Okay. How, with all you've learned about 3 principles psychology and how your operating system works inside, what was the hint? What was the indicator that these, no matter how real these thoughts looked, that they were not, in fact, true?
The hint was definitely how I felt inside. I was feeling just like super cluttered inside. Like I was feeling a lot of stress and anxiety and a lot of just like insecure thoughts coming in. I didn't have...
You're saying the feeling you were living in, which is actually communicating the state your mind was in. That feeling was communicating that these were subjective, that they weren't true, that there's something else you could be understanding that actually is the facts.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's the feeling. When we listen to the feeling, it's actually communicating the thoughts in our head. Are they subjective or objective? Are they fiction? Or are they made up, or are they fact? So please tell us what happened where then you actually experienced the facts.
Yeah. So as I said before, I kind of took some steps to clear my head and kind of take a minute to step back and let go of all of the thoughts that I had going on in my head. And then the next time I sat down at the program, honestly, I just noticed something that I haven't noticed before on the software itself.
What did you notice?
I noticed that this one, I'm going to call it like the volume level to just keep it simple. I was noticing that that was at the bottom of the screen. And so logically, I was just like, okay, that doesn't seem right. The volume's at the bottom. Let's shift it up a little bit and see if that fixes the problem I was having, which was that there wasn't any volume coming out of the files that I was generating.
So you noticed something that existed there the whole time.
Yeah.
That you had very little awareness previously.
Yeah.
That is an excellent example of when we are thinking anxious thoughts, there are things we don't even see that are right in front of us. Like our awareness is low about things that are right in front of us because our head is so cluttered. So with a clearer head, with taking the steps inside to psychologically listen, to let go of those thoughts, all of a sudden your awareness increased of something that was right in front of you all of the time.
Yeah.
Classic with anxious thinking versus letting your head clear out. And then as you noticed it, you took logical steps.
Yeah.
That is also part of using the mind consciously, called innate wisdom or common sense. Common sense, you started seeing that, oh, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah. Just very simple steps.
And then how did you know these were the facts?
Well, the feeling was just a lot more grounded. Like, I felt like when I realized that, like, that was the cause of my problem, like, it just clicked, honestly, in my head. Like, it made a lot of sense. Because before, when, like, all the volume bars were at the bottom, I was just kind of, like, blindly accepting it. But it didn't really, like, make sense to me in my head. But then once I fixed that, it was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. Like, it all clicks. Like, I feel like this answers the questions that I had about, like, why or how this program works.
So there's two parts to that. One is the feeling inside is calmer and it's lighter, okay? Which a lot of times can be actually the feeling of clarity. And then you said about the click, which is also another feeling. And that's basically communicating that you just had a leap of awareness, okay? You just had like a realization. And that is the opposite way of using the mind than creating and believing a lot of anxious thoughts or nervous thoughts or worried thoughts. So it's a great example of going from a subjective level of understanding, yet when it looks so real and true, but the feeling is communicating it is not. Okay. And then taking the steps inside to actually allow yourself to experience the objective level of understanding, which again is communicated through the feeling.
I think another point to that example is that Ellie took a second chance to try to figure it out. She didn't avoid it. She didn't avoid the feelings that were happening before. She didn't avoid the thoughts that were happening before. She kind of went in with a beginner state of mind. The second time that she approached it, like she said before, she closed off all the tabs. She was like, how can I do this again? She kind of rebooted her whole system and was more curious. She took a lot more logical approaches, and she ended up figuring out the solution by herself then.
And I call that, at least part of that, called determination, right? Instead of a common thing I hear is being fed up, or it's not possible, or escaping it or avoiding it, as you had said, Ritu. And instead, she just kind of she paused, took kind of a logical break, mostly psychologically, okay? And like you said, she went back in with a fresh state of mind and kept at it, but kept at it in a more logical, healthy way. It was from awareness of how her operating system works inside, which these are just some of the things that she's learned in mental health counseling grounded in 3 principles: psychology, mind, thought, and consciousness. Great point, Ritu. So glad you brought it up. Any other thoughts or examples? We could keep going on with these examples for quite a while, but I know we're running out of time right now. So this is why it's important for you to come back and stay tuned for more episodes of Got Your Back podcast, which is understanding mind inside, an essential part of you. It's very empowering, and it really points out how much you're much more capable than you've understood in the past or you've thought in the past. And it's really just learning to use your powerful operating system inside more consciously.
Yeah, I think to wrap it up, I kind of want to bring up a statistic from the American Psychological Association. So in 2023, they did a poll of men and women ages 18 to 34, and around 62% of women and 51% of men in this age bracket reported feeling completely overwhelmed by stress most days. And then when they polled men and women ages 35 to 44, 48% of women and 48% of men reported also feeling completely overwhelmed by stress. And I just wanted to bring this statistic up to you, Faith, because it is very significant. And given your body of work and understanding, I just wanted to ask, what is your read on this stat?
So number one, I think the first point is people The word stress can almost be like a trash can of throwing all emotional reactions in it. So it can be this very commonly used word to describe, actually, I'm feeling distressed right now. Often it can be anxiety, worry, being overwhelmed, but there's other takes on stress too. But it's just this metaphorical bucket of all these insecure states of mind or emotional reactions in live time with your operating system. My gut is a majority of those are feeling some level of anxiety or fear about whatever is going on in their life. My other gut feeling is, as you reported or spoke about, Ellie, and also you, Ritu, that when you first went into mental health counseling, your level of awareness about anxiety or worry or fear was relatively low. And I've actually seen this a lot with clients where they so often don't even know that they're living in a feeling or what that feeling is, particularly when it comes to anxiety. My gut is that a number of people, a significant number of people that were actually interviewed in that survey needed to have more awareness that they were experiencing worry or fear or anxiety. So my impression is that the number of people that are actually experiencing anxiety, it's underreported due to it's in their best interest that they increase awareness that they're experiencing it and when they're experiencing it. So people actually need to be aware at greater levels what anxiety, panic, or fear feels like, and like when they're experiencing it to actually report it. So we just did a decent deep dive into anxiety. This is part 2 of looking at and understanding anxiety. But of course, there's more to understand, such as taking a closer look at social anxiety, such as taking a closer look on what happens to our biology when we're anxious. There's some really important things to increase awareness there. We're also going to be looking more at coping mechanisms, which is an important part of experiencing anxiety. And what is the opposite of coping mechanisms? One of them is learning how to reflect more and using the mind more consciously. So please come back, continue to listen. It is an act of self-love. It's worth your time. And thank you so much for listening to Got Your Back podcast. I'm your host, Faith Escudero.
I'm your junior host, Ritu.
And I'm your other junior host, Ellie. Thank you, everyone.
Until the next time.